Hi everyone, I'm back for another video for Top Drive's Beginner's Guide. This is part 2. If you want to go watch part 1, I already posted it in the playlist that you will find. And today we will be talking about mainly the acceleration curve. Acceleration curve is a big topic, and I think it's very important to have a specific focus for it. So without further ado, let's just get right into it. And we will begin by talking about the 0 to 60 miles per hour acceleration, which is the only visible picture of your acceleration curve on the card. And anything else you don't really know. It's not written on the card, and these are basically some values that you don't see on the card, which are MRA, OLA, also HRA and SHRA. All of these mean mid-range acceleration, off-the-line acceleration, high-range acceleration, super high-range acceleration. Furthermore, you also have brakes, which I also included part of the acceleration curve, although brakes aren't an acceleration, but nor are the values that I just mentioned. In fact, it's very important to point out that these values are not accelerations, just ratios with respect to the 0 to 60 acceleration. So I always write this in TDO. I always tell this that these are not physical values. These don't mean per se anything. They are not accelerations. In fact, I think that the definition is pretty weak, in a sense that they define these values to be acceleration, but they're just ratios, so they are not acceleration. Nonetheless, these values are still very important to understand the overall acceleration curve. Remember again, these are just pictures, they're not actual acceleration values, they're just like ratios with respect to our 0 to 60. These are still defined to be, for example, OLA from 0 to 30, MRA from 60 to 100, HRA from 100 to 150, and Super HRA from 150 to 200. However, I think it's important to note that MRA is still a pretty good value to understand the overall trend of the acceleration curve. This is because I believe, from my personal analytics and analytics from other players with respect to the game's stages of acceleration, we sort of understood that these acceleration are smooth and continuous. This also means that they are probably defined with a function that Arch is providing to create this acceleration, which means that there is a logarithmic gradient that is defining these accelerations. What I mean is that when you picture the acceleration curve, for example, a velocity versus time graph, you will see that this function will look like a logarithmic one, and if you take the logarithmic gradient of it, there is a constant value that is basically defining the acceleration. This is not always true. When Hutch, for example, writes in the correction note, for example, improved top-end acceleration, I think they just look at the end part of this acceleration based on this formula and they just tweak it. So they change basically one part of the curve that is defining the top-end acceleration, which is probably derived by this function, and therefore might not be totally correct for the overall acceleration curve. Some other cars, however, don't have an MRA because their top speed doesn't even reach 100 miles per hour, or their top speed is just above 100 miles per hour, and their acceleration curve may sort of asymptotically reach this value, which sort of changes the value, and so it's not really as meaningful as it would be for other cars. So if you want to sort of understand their acceleration, you would need to test this car on tracks. And actually, the best thing to do is just to look at the times and see if the car is good or not. I would say for all cars that's the case, but you can sort of predict the acceleration curve from MRA, and so if you don't really know the time, you can say, oh well, I remember this car having good MRA or not so good MRA, so I will put this on drag if it has good MRA and hope for the best, and maybe it wins, maybe it doesn't. But it's sort of a knowledge game that you will probably understand over time. So you will know which cars will have good MRAs and which cars don't have good MRA, and so on and so forth. And in the next slide, I will talk about how to relate MRA with OLA. OLA is also a very important value because some cars need to have good MRA because they need to be good at drags. But some other cars that are mostly twisty cars, they need to have good OLA in order to be good at their tracks, like slalom test, G-force, so on and so forth. So, into the next slide. So, for cars whose top speed is a good chunk above 100 miles per hour and which MRA can be calculated, you can sort of predict or determine the value of your OLA. And this is said to be that OLA is the reverse of MRA. What does reverse mean? It means that if you sum these two values, you reach a constant value, that it's an arbitrary one for our case. So for example, you determine that your constant value is, I don't know, 200. And you say, okay, I have an MRA value of 120, which means that my OLA value is 80. So the bigger the MRA value, the smaller the OLA value. So it means the weaker the OLA value, and vice versa. So this means that if the MRA of a car is pretty bad, it means that it has good OLA. And this is a very interesting fact because you can't really calculate the OLA on yourself, nor there is a value that defines OLA. It's any arbitrary value that you want to define. You just know sort of which ones is bigger than the other. And you know this by looking at MRA and just doing the reverse value. So you could say, okay, it's a negative value, it's a small value, it's a bigger value, it doesn't really matter, but you can predict which cars are better for twisty tracks. And OLA is still a very important variable for those very twisty tracks where they depend on. But in the next slide, we will also understand how to calculate this MRA value, and I will also give an example with it. Hence, how would you calculate the MRA value? The MRA value has a distinct formula, and here I can show it in the slide below. It represents the 0 to 60 value over the difference between 0 to 100, which is a value that you can find by racing your car on the campaign. You will find this track as a test one for the campaign, and you can use it every time you want to. And the other 0 to 60 time, everything multiplied by 100. So I'll give you an example here again for the Hyundai Veloster rally car. Hyundai Veloster has a 0 to 100 time of 5.25 as I use this car on the test track, and its 0 to 60 values can be taken directly from the car. I recommend to always use the car stock. So 000, no upgrades. The MRA value is generally better when the car is stock. So 0 to 60 is 2.6, and I just plug in these values into the formula, and there you go. This is my MRA value from the Hyundai Veloster. In the next slide, I will likely briefly talk about brakes, which isn't part of the acceleration curve, but it sort of defines a time for specific tracks like 0 to 100 to 0, where basically brakes are used. So let's jump into the next slide as well. So here we are on the penultimate slide talking about brakes. These are categorized in three tiers, and these are A, B, or C. And you can find these values for your cars on TDR because the whole community is kind enough to basically fill out times to determine these brake tier values, also for MRA, also for a lot of tracks in TDR. This is a really nice community, and you can find a lot of nice people around that would help you in many ways. Personally, I can obviously talk about personally that in TDO, so Top Drives Official, there are a lot of nice people that would help you any day if you have any questions about the cars, and if you ask suggestions for anything. And I really thank the whole community for being always present and always helping the other people out. We will briefly talk about tags in the last slide. This is because it's not really a big topic. There isn't much to say about it, but I still wanted to include it in this video. So let's jump into the next slide. And there isn't really much to talk about tags. There are only two types of tags in the game. This is either temporary or permanent tags. The temporary tags is like a collection series tag, for example Tuma's collection, which we are just having right now in the game. And other tags are just permanent. Part of them are either car update tags like EGT, so European Grand Tour, and all the ones previous this update. And there are other permanent tags that are, for example, innovative, driver choice, concept, motorsport. All of these are permanent, but they're not car update tags. Sometimes they appear in events, sometimes they don't. The most prevalent ones that may appear in events are motorsport, concept, or eco-friendly. The other ones are almost never used, maybe once, twice in a year. But they are still permanent tags. Anyways, if you haven't done this already, check out the first video that I made that is in this same playlist. If you want the introductory part, I think most of the people already know those details, but I'm sure that some beginners might not know those informations. So I think this video is a bit more an advanced one, as in there are very fundamental values of informational values for the game that are very important, but I think that I also went in detail of what these means in a general sense. I'm a scientific guy. I really like to talk about like curves and functions and everything, so I know that my jargon is not the most friendly one for anyone. I hope I was really clear and understandable when I was talking. If you have any questions, I'm really happy to answer those in the comment section below. If you want to contact me directly on TDO, I'm always there. And I really thank you for joining me today, and really have a nice day, evening, or night, wherever you are. So goodbye and see you in the next video.